This is Jeff Huber, lead pastor at Summit Church in Durango, and I'm here for our Thursday morning devotional. It is Monday, Thursday. It's a good day to gather and reflect upon this last week of the life of Jesus. We're going to be talking today about how do you remain calm in an anxious world. Have you ever been around somebody that they're just, it doesn't even matter what's going on around them. They're kind of just seem to be taking it all in stride. And I mean, today's story of Jesus and the trial of Jesus, his arrest, is just the way he's treated is kind of a great case study and a great example of what it takes to kind of just take a deep breath and remain calm in the midst of anxiety all around you, fear, people, hurling accusations at Jesus and stuff. And so we're going to be, we've been reading through Luke's gospel together. We're going to be in Luke 22 today, and we're going to be towards the end of that and the beginning of Luke 23, where Jesus is arrested and he's on trial before the Roman governor, Pontius Pilate. And so we're going to go ahead and jump in and read some of this text together. And so I invite you just to hear these words as we're going to jump to the trial where Jesus has been arrested and taken before Pilate. It says, beginning of chapter 23. Then the entire council took Jesus to Pilate, the Roman governor. They began to state their case. This man has been leading our people astray by telling them not to pay taxes to the Roman government and by claiming he is the Messiah, a king. Let's just stop right there. This kind of shows you the heart and the state of the people who were there in front accusing Jesus, because, honestly, these are people that hate paying taxes, and they oftentimes are longing for a Messiah or a messianic king that will kick the Romans out of the Holy Land or out of the area where the Jews live, so they won't have to pay these taxes. Yet here they are saying, oh, well, he's telling us not to pay taxes, which, by the way, Jesus never said. Remember, Jesus does say, give to Caesar what is Caesar, give to God what is God. So it's not even a true statement. But then Pilate asked Jesus, are you the king of the Jews? Jesus replied, you have said it. Pilate turned to the leading priests and to the crowd and said, I find nothing wrong with this man. Then they became insistent, but he is causing riots by his teaching wherever he goes, all over Judea, from Galilee to Jerusalem. He's a Galilean, Pilate said. Well, then, when he said that he was, Pilate sent him to Herod Antipas, because Galilee was under Herod's jurisdiction, and Herod happened to be in Jerusalem at the time. Herod was delighted at the opportunity to see Jesus because he'd heard all about him, and he'd been hoping for a long time to see him perform a miracle. He asked Jesus question after question, but Jesus refused to answer. Meanwhile, the leading priests and teachers of religious law stood there shouting their accusations. Then Herod and his soldiers began mocking and ridiculing Jesus. And finally, they put a royal robe on him and sent him back to Pilate. Herod and Pilate, who had been enemies before, now became friends that day. The interesting story. You have a lot of different layers going on here. Everything from Jesus bringing people together to be friends who had been kind of enemies, mostly because they're, I think, jealous of each other, envious of the power of the other person ruling different parts of this region. But you also have Jesus just kind of sitting there. It's an interesting thing. He doesn't ever raise his voice. He doesn't ever argue. You know what he does? He lets them kind of convict themselves. That really is what's happening in this story. And this is a great opportunity for us to learn a little bit about how to remain calm in an anxious world. No matter what we do in life, no matter how we answer, no matter how we respond, there's going to be sometimes fear and anxiety going on around us. We can't always change the circumstances on the outside. I mean, Jesus, I guess he could have just kind of, waved his hand and done some miraculous thing, but instead he let people kind of take their course. And in doing that, really set up what he's going to do, which is bring about, we've been talking about salvation, bringing wholeness, bringing healing. Notice in this story that Herod Antipas he wants to see a miracle. I mean, there's this desire, I think, for all of us to see something miraculous, to see the things that maybe we're struggling with in life just be taken care of and wiped away. Wouldn't it be great if, I mean, I was thinking about 2 years ago. 2 years ago this week, we were doing Holy Land in a Holy Week in our homes. We were preparing for our first Easter where the church couldn't gather and be together. I mean, it's a radically different world we live in now than then. But back then, man, the anxiety was through the roof, and you couldn't do anything about it. I mean, they said wear robes, be in small groups of people, wear robes, wear masks. Sorry, be in small groups of people. They gave us all these ideas and things we could try to do, but we couldn't control what was going on in the world around us. And really, this story is kind of about how Jesus enters into a world like ours, in a world where he can't change the outcome. But what he can change, the only thing he has any control over, is how he responds. And that's one of the things when people come to see me and they're dealing with tough stuff, I always remind them there's really only one thing we have any control over. We can't control how another person reacts or how they do. All we can control is how we respond. And notice what Jesus does throughout this trial, throughout this it's kind of a kangaroo court. To talk about it in the devotional meditation moments as Alice in Wonderland kind of thing, where it's, the court scene in Alice in Wonderland, where it's already kind of, everything is kind of, we know what's going to happen. And yet Jesus shows up in that setting, and he takes a deep breath, and he says to people, well, who do you say that I am? You have said it. And he kind of turns it back on them. And this is a great reminder to us that when we're feeling anxious, when we're dealing with anxiety, when we're struggling with fear, when we're struggling with whatever it is that might come our way, that if we can be settled in ourselves, if we can listen to the voice. It's one of the reasons why I encourage you to do the meditation moments every day to kind of get settled. I know this is my experience. If I don't, in the morning, spend about 20 minutes just being quiet and listening, I usually have a lot of issues going on, a lot of struggles that day. So, I just know this is kind of a practical reality. And really what Jesus is, remember that before this whole thing happens, before Jesus gets to the Last Supper, before any of that, he's spending time in prayer and, with God, even though it's an agonizing prayer. There's this idea of Jesus being centered. And so when these moments come, he said, well, what do you say? I mean, you've said it, kind of like this is your thing. And here's, once again, this is just a helpful thing for us to remember. Just one little thing you might take with you today is this, that if we can be settled in who we are and let the world around us be anxious, let it be fearful, let people do what they need to do, and know that we belong to God. I mean, Jesus in this moment knows who he is. He knows he belongs to God. He knows he's from God. I mean, he is God in the flesh, but he's also fully human. He just is settled in that. And in the middle of all of this, he just kind of moves through that moment, and he moves through what's going to happen next, which is this horrible, not only is he arrested, but he's on trial, but then he's going to be beaten, and he's going to go to a cross. But he also knows what the end game is. He knows where it's going to end up. He knows that God is going to take this and use this and wring from it, like a washcloth or tissue, going to wring good from it and bring about our salvation. A reminder that each one of us can experience wholeness, peace, and grace, even in the middle of whatever is anxious and going on and is anxious in the world. So I'm not sure what you might be dealing with today, and maybe today's a good day, and that's awesome. But I know that all of us at some point have these moments. And so if you do have prayer requests, we invite you always to put those in the chat area there if you're on Facebook or YouTube, or if you want to go to our website and just kind of send us a prayer request. We'd love to. We send those out regularly to our prayer team, and we're praying for you and praying for those things. I know there's always, this last week, I was working with a family that has gone through a suicide in their family. And so, gosh, there's just so much. And so I ask you to just pray for them, lift that up in prayer. I was thinking if someone is doing a graveside memorial on Saturday, the Saturday before Easter, and saying farewell to a loved one. And so, we have these things happening in the world around us, and maybe we have an illness or a sickness we're dealing with, or, there's uncertainty in our work, or something going on with our family, and whatever it is, sometimes, and many times, most of the time, there are things we can't always control. And so, what do we do in those moments is really the question. And really, Jesus gives us an answer as we watch him moving through this final week of his life. That he moves through it. He's present. He's there with the disciples. He's he's experiencing the Last Supper with them. And you know what's so funny is he knows that this is our Last Supper, but they don't really know that at that point, and yet they're going to become even more anxious and more fearful. They're going to all leave him and abandon him and betray him. He knows all that is coming, and yet he sits in the middle of it, and he's present, and he knows that God is with him, and he knows who he is and whose he is and who he belongs to. And so I'm glad you're doing this morning, just taking some time to remind yourself you are made by God to be loved by God. This is who you are. And in these moments, whatever moments you might be dealing with, that God says, I'm with you. I'm walking with you in these moments. And to know that when we get anxious, that doesn't have to have the final word. I mean, that really is something we say every Easter, but I remind you of is that, Easter is just a reminder that death doesn't have the final word. The worst thing will never be the last thing. And so no matter what it is we're going through, no matter what anxiety we're feeling, to know we don't walk through it alone. And God says, I'm walking with you. I'm walking with you through this. And to know that Jesus has been there. He's experienced these things, and to kind of take a cue from him, take a breath. And one of the things when people come and they're struggling with, say, family or friends or others, and they're struggling with other people's behaviors, I always remind you can't change that behavior. You can change how you respond. And sometimes all there is to say is what Jesus says to Pilate, which is, well, you've said it. That's kind of your thing. Here's what Jesus saying. That's your thing. That's your. I'm going to let you have that. I'm not going to let that. I'm a Star Trek fan, and maybe you've watched Star Trek or Star Wars or whatever. There's this idea of around all their ships is a force field, or shields is what they call them in Star Trek. And shields up, So sometimes in our lives we need to say shields up, and the way we remain calm in an anxious world is to know what's ours and what's not, what we can control and what we can't, what we need to say, okay, I need to do something about that. That's something I can do. And when we have to say, that I can't fix that. I can't do that. I can't, part of this is just drawing boundaries. There's a great book that I always recommend for folks if you're struggling with this, by the way, called Boundaries by Cloud and Townsend. It's written quite a long time ago, but man, it's so helpful when to say yes, when to say no, and how to know what's yours and how to know what's not yours. And a huge way that we remain calm when the world is anxious around us, and knowing what's ours and what's not ours, what's ours, and what do we need to give to God. I was thinking about this, with our kids. Our daughter's 20 years old. She's just graduated from high school, but kind of taking a year to be at home and do a little work in a couple different places, and kind of trying to figure out what her next step is. And I would love to tell her, here's what you need to do. And don't we always know as parents? We always know here's what you're supposed to do. And yet, I also know I can't make those decisions for her. I can't live those things for her. And sometimes I have to let that go. I've often told parents, their kids, they belong to God before they belong to us. And sometimes we have to give them back to God because we can't fix it. We can't make better. When our kids are little, most of the time we can make things better. We can take care of them. But man, as they grow and start making their own decisions, and that they have to make those decisions. And in doing that, there are certain things that we can't do. And especially when there's anxiety around decisions that are being made and stuff. And so I just remind you, this is another great example, a great way to remind yourself of what's yours and what's not yours, and know that, you can trust giving that to God, because God took even this mock trial, even this arrest of Jesus, even this, Last Supper, this night. God takes this flogging that Jesus is going to receive, the death of Jesus on a cross, takes all of that. And 3 days later, he brings about a resurrection, a new life, healing, wholeness, salvation. And so just want to encourage you to maybe think differently, reframe, if you will, when things that are happening that are anxious in the world. What can I really control in this? And what do I need to let go and kind of give to God and say, you've said it is what it is, and let you have that. Once again, if you have prayer requests, we encourage you to put those in there. This is Monday, Thursday, so we have three opportunities tonight for you to experience this holy day, the day we remember the Lord's Supper. We have a service at 6:00 at the church, at Summit Church, and it's called a Tenebrae service. And so we're going to have communion together. And then we're going to kind of darken the room and extinguish several different candles, remembering the journey Jesus takes, and really have the kind of this really powerful experience, this moment. That'll be at 6 at the church, and then that'll be live streamed also. But also we'll have the Living Last Supper online again. That we did it a few years ago, but we recorded it and we've put it up the last couple of years for those of you who are not able to get out, so you can do the Living Last Supper and take communion. We kind of give you instruction for communion to do that at your home on that. Also at 7:30 tonight, we will be with Rooted, our college students up at the Fort Lewis College campus on Rim Drive. The McPherson Chapel is what it's called. It's where they meet every Thursday, and they've invited us to come up and do communion with them and do worship with them. And they're, like I said, there every Thursday, and they've invited us to come up. We're gonna have a great time up there with them. So and then tomorrow, Good Friday, we have a prayer station set up from noon until 8 p.m. So from noon until 8 p.m. we have you can come by anytime during that time, and it's kind of an experiential prayer station Good Friday service, and really it's a powerful thing. We've done it with our students before in the past on their retreats, and thought, let's do this for the whole congregation this year. So that'll be at the church. Also, there will be an online Good Friday experience that you can do as well, kind of taking you through some things. So a couple options there. And then this weekend we have Easter. So don't forget, Saturday night, 5:30. We have our Saturday night, it'll be Easter service. And then Sunday morning, we'll be moving to our new worship schedule. So I'll remind you of that. 7 a.m. is an outdoor sunrise service. That won't be every week, but that's just this week for Easter. And then 9 and 10:30 will be when we do worship with the band. And then at 11:55, we'll be with the choir, organ, hymns. And so that's our schedule this week. And I hope you can join us, and all those services will be streamed as usual. We're just really grateful you could join this morning and come and be a part of this devotional time. And once again, I just want to remind you again, if you have something you're anxious about, or you've experienced anxiety, or you've got things going, I know that anxiety is kind of at epidemic levels in some ways we have a lot of people struggling with that. And so this is a great text to remind ourselves, gosh, what's ours? And what do we just need to give to God? What's ours and what's others that we need to let them have? I just encourage you to kind of take a deep breath every day and remind yourself of what's yours and what you might give to God this season in particular, and know that God has walked that path, and he's taken all those things, and he wants to bring about salvation, wholeness, healing for us. And a big way to do that, just take a breath. Take a breath and remind ourselves what belongs to God, what belongs to me. So when you get into a moment, here's a great little trick. Ask yourself, what belongs to God really in this? And what belongs to me? What can I really do about this? And what do I really need to give to God? Because that really is the theme of this whole entire week, and that will culminate with Easter weekend. So, hey, great to be with you again today. I want to invite you just to bow your heads, and we're going to pray together as we end our time. God, thank you for these moments to just reflect upon even these painful, difficult parts of Scripture that talk about your arrest and your trial and what that means for us. God, it's easy to read that story and think it happened, a couple thousand years ago and doesn't really apply to us. But man, every part of this story is really for us. It can be our story. There are moments where we feel like we're on trial in life, or we feel like just life is kind of pressuring it around us. So there's people shouting around us like they were at Jesus, or there are all these things happening. And in the middle of that, he was able to remain calm and just say, hey, what is yours, and I'll take what is mine. And so God, help us in those moments to remember what's ours and what belongs to God, and only take those things that really we can do anything about. And also to remember that as things happen around us, we can't control, that you're with us, that you promise to be with us. God, I know that there are people on this devotion this morning going through tough stuff and difficult things that we're carrying with us. And so I just ask that you would be with them, be with all those who lifted up prayer requests, be with us this week as we remember today that holy meal, that Last Supper, and then tomorrow, Good Friday, your death and your time on the cross and what that means for us. And then this weekend leads up to your resurrection. So God, help us to just be grateful and to really receive your gift you long to give us of salvation during this Holy Week. We pray these things in the name of your Son, Christ. Amen. Well, hey, it's once again been great to be with you. Have a blessed, wonderful day. Hopefully we can see at some point today as one of our Monday, Thursday services, or tomorrow, Good Friday, this weekend for Easter. Go in peace, serve God, and remember what's yours, and remember what you need to give to God.